There are things that happen in the course of any business person's life that inspire you to keep pushing on where things are a little bit difficult. And there are many difficult days in any business person's life. We're doing 10,000 guests a month coming through Maison Privee. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of activity.
You've got 10,000 guests coming through a month?
Yeah.
Today's guest is a leader in the world of luxury travel and hospitality. From the transport sector to short-term rentals, his career is as dynamic as it gets. He's the founder and managing director of Maison Privee, an award-winning short-term rental company that's redefining the vacation experience in the UAE and beyond.
The opportunity to stay somewhere that a guest may not otherwise be able to stay. So whether that's a flashy penthouse they could never afford normally spend time in, but they might be able to book it for 2 weeks for their holidays.
Get ready for a great conversation with Paul Mallee. This episode is proudly sponsored by Allsop & Allsop, Dubai's leading and largest real estate brokerage. They've been in business for 16 years and they have created 153 millionaires within their organisation. The top earners in the company are taking in over 10 million dirhams in commission annually. Now, has that got your attention? Because it gets better. If you're considering a change in career or you're looking for your next step, there literally is only one choice. Life at Allsop & Allsop offers unlimited tax-free earning potential and an unmatched high-performance culture that you'll find in no other brokerage here in the UAE. They're there because they're designed to unlock your full potential. Be trained by the best to become the best. You'll be working with a hand-picked team of real estate experts who really are the best the industry has to offer. There's no wonder they have the strongest retention in the industry. Are you ready to change your life? Get in touch with Allsop & Allsop. Keep moving. Paul, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome indeed. Now, you're becoming a bit of a media personality at the moment. I've seen you on other podcasts recently.
It's nice to be out and about and speaking about the things that we're passionate about.
Do you like telling your story? Do you like talking to people about the business?
Yeah, look, I think it's very important to articulate the rationale that brought you to where you are, to think about the things that you're trying to focus on. And to, I suppose, in doing so, channel the direction of travel that you're going to continue down. And I think having these kind of conversations is very helpful in thinking through that process.
I get it. Now, a lot of people listening to this and watching this right now are hoping that they're going to have some takeaways from this. They're going to learn something valuable that can help them maybe understand their entrepreneurial journey or better decisions they can make when it comes to using their properties or investing. So let's give everybody some context so they understand who you are, where you're from, and why your company is doing so well. So just give me a bit of a backstory there, and then I'll interject when I want to ask questions.
Sure. Well, my company is called Maison Privee. We are arguably the leading vacation rental property manager in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. We have a large portfolio of vacation rental apartments, villas, penthouses. We apply a very simple philosophy, but difficult maybe in execution of having a 5-star experience for all of our guests who come and stay with us for a few nights, a few weeks, or sometimes a few months. And they stay with us as an alternative to staying in a traditional hotel. And in doing so, we want to make sure that we provide them with that 5-star experience, that we wrap a service blanket around them during their time with us. And in doing that, making sure that we then as the asset manager are generating a higher return for the owners of those assets. In other words, those apartments, those penthouses, those villas. It's our objective to make a higher yield for the owners of those assets in managing those properties as vacation rentals.
So in that business, I mean, vacation rentals, that encapsulates everything from the grubby little studio flat in International City where people are on a budget to people that want to rent, a 10-bedroom stunning house on the crescent of the Palm. How do you separate that, and which part of the market is really your sweet spot?
Yeah, I think you're right. There's lots of different accommodation offerings that could come within vacation rental umbrella, but you could also extend it to potentially co-living type developments, to timeshare type concepts. to anywhere that there is effectively an accommodation offering a serviced apartment or a hotel apartment building. This is all a very similar type of product offering. And within any of the players or the offerings that are in the market, there are different tiers, there are different categories. And it's up to the player who is operating within the space that they're most comfortable with to define it in the appropriate way. For us, we made a very clear decision at the start of the business to focus on the high end of the market, to stay in the waterfront areas, the downtown, the DISC prime areas, Reem Island, for example, in Abu Dhabi, also close to the business district. So we would capture that type of guest, where they are in town for a project or for a number of weeks on a work assignment that they might want to have an alternative to a hotel for that period. From my own experience as a consultant over the years, in my earlier days, I always knew that if you're in town on an extended project, a hotel is not necessarily where you want to be for that time, because you do get a little bit stir crazy no matter how nice the hotel room is or how the hotel itself is. To have your own apartment with your own kitchen, your own, living area and all of that kind of stuff, was a very attractive thing. And during my time as I worked in these types of environments, I did seek out alternative accommodations in other countries that weren't just hotels. And I think that was part of the gestation of the idea for Maison Privee. It was around, how can you package together a product that would appeal to both the corporate type travelers and also to the vacation people who are on holidays and their families, maybe with a couple of kids, and you want to have that space. You want to be able to make sure that you keep the consistency in the kids' meals, and you can cook at home if you have your own kitchen, right? All of our properties are fully equipped with all of the things that a family would need to prepare meals for the kids. So having that facility available and putting it in place in a way that was accessible and that addressed the needs of the client bases that we segmented. So thinking about whether it's that corporate, whether it's the free independent traveler who might be a couple traveling, or families with kids, making sure that you've got an offering that suits their likely demand and needs is really important. And that was important in terms of how we structured things.
I remember I lived in Amsterdam for 4 years, and for the first 6 months I lived in the Hilton Hotel on a street called Apollo Line. It was where Yoko Ono and John Lennon spent their famous month in bed thing. And I lived in that hotel, and the first couple of weeks were great. There was a gym downstairs, there was an Italian restaurant in the building, there was a car park outside, so no drama of anything. But then the 4th week and the 5th week and the 6th week, it was just, there's nothing left on the room service menu. There's only certain TV channels that I've got to watch. Bear in mind, it was a while ago. And it became quite lonely, because other than that, it was, I'll go down the pub with some of the guys from the office and have a beer and sit and watch the football in there. And that wasn't what I wanted to do either, really. So I really I get that. And I remember I moved from that into a service department. And as silly as this may seem, they had a kitchen. And because I had a kitchen, I could go to the supermarket, I could buy some stuff that I wanted to eat, I could cook what I wanted to cook, okay? And it just felt more homely. It wasn't perfect, but it was more homely until then eventually I moved into the apartment that I took. So I kind of understand what it's like for people doing that. We go and work overseas for a period of time, and we want to make sure that it feels the right place to be. But being in that high-end marketplace that you sit in, what's difficult about sitting in that space as a business, and what are the advantages?
So I guess while we retain that high-end ethos and that focus, there are categories within that high-end band as well that we make sure that we address. So in other words, we have the luxury villas on the Palm, which are, the fabulous 6-7 bedroom villas with private beach and pool and all that kind of stuff. And this is, the signature product. The level below that would be, if you use the terms below, for still super nice properties, but really nice penthouses, really in really high end buildings, where you have, the facilities of those those buildings to enjoy, as opposed to just the apartment itself as part of your stay. And then you have the kind of what you might call the more standard high end properties, which would be the 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, which are still in really nice parts of town and all selected. So we curate very carefully the product that we take in. Because what we want to do is we want to make sure that any property we take into the portfolio works financially for the owner of that property. There is no point in us taking in something that is, demonstrably not the right fit for what we do, not the right fit for vacation rentals because it's in the wrong part of town, or the fact that it doesn't have the fit and finish that our guests would be willing to pay for. So we select and then we set up. And we manage the process of finding the guests, making sure that we look after the guests, and delivering on that experience. But it's a bit like, your point of, you stayed in a service department, and a service department is kind of like edging its way towards what we do in terms of product, but not there yet. I mean, our apartments are all, set out with, full proper kitchens, full living spaces and fully equipped in all the ways that you would expect if you were in your own nice home. But I guess the other thing that we offer, which I think is really important, is the opportunity to stay somewhere that a guest may not otherwise be able to stay. So, whether that's a flashy penthouse where they have an amazing view that they could never afford normally to spend time in, they're not necessarily going to be in a position to be able to buy that property because, the astronomical value. But they might be able to, book it for 2 weeks for their holidays. And I think this is a great opportunity, especially for families, where otherwise you're going to have to book 2 or 3 hotel rooms. That gets very expensive very quickly. And also you're not maybe, all as together as you should be when you're in separate, interjoining rooms and all that kind of thing. But it's still a hotel room. Whereas
you've got the tenant or the guest, and then you've got the property owner. Which is the most challenging to get? First of all, how many properties are in the portfolio now?
We've about 200 units.
200 units. So is it easy to get guests or easy to get property owners?
I would say that hands down, it's easier to get guests.
Okay.
For 2 reasons. One is that we have the benefit of big global shop windows like Booking.com, like Airbnb, like Expedia. So we can create and we do create our profiles on these platforms and have the visibility of the Atlantis. So so we are up there in terms of the opportunity for a guest to select us as they can select the Atlantis versus Five versus wherever.
I guess, nice and easy. Use a Booking.com. People go on there, depending on what they're looking for, then you come up in the search engine on Booking.com and transaction takes place. Booking.com take their happy days.
Yeah.
So then the challenge is getting property owners. I say the challenge, you've got 200 units, so it can't be that much of a challenge, but clearly the focus has to be more strategized around how you get these these property owners. So what is an example of a good property owner that you like to have on your listing or your register, and how do you go about finding them?
Yeah, so I think the interesting part about talking to the property owners is that we're not a real estate company. We're very much a hospitality company, and we're an asset manager. So we don't buy and sell. We're not looking to take a twist out of working with the owners in the way that the normal real estate justifiably do in terms of how they run their business. But for us, it's really about, okay, if we're talking to an owner, they have the right asset, first of all, that we're interested in working with and we know will perform. As I said, we're not going to take on something that we know is not going to work. We work on a management fee basis, so we take a percentage of the revenue as our fee. So that incentivizes us to generate more revenue, to make sure that we keep the occupancy up, that we keep the average day rate at a level that gets us the right occupancy and gets us the right bottom line number for the owner. So this is really important for us in terms of delivery. But we are selective on what we take in. We turn down probably half the units that come to us over the years. We've turned down because they weren't the right fit for us as a company in terms of what we wanted to deliver as a service to the guests. But also if the unit just wasn't going to perform, we don't take it on because we know that owner is better off to do a long-term rental with that property. Or
so take me on a journey. Let's say we've got this house just sat here on the Palm right now this minute. So let's say we've got this house. It's a 5-bedroom house on the Palm, and I said to you, right, let's make it a vacation rental. You take it over, and I'm the property owner. What would be the journey?
So the first thing we'll assess the unit. So we'll come in and we'll have a walk around. We'll make sure that
you go. There's a podcast studio in the 5th.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and obviously where you've got like cool stuff in a
podcast studio.
Yeah, no, and no jokes. There are certain things that you can do in units that would really help would deliver an experiential opportunity. Right. And these are all good things. So, you maybe you've got a gym inside the house, which is not every house is a gym, right? Maybe you've got, snooker tables, sauna, etc. All these things, right? Whatever it might be. So these are all, added value elements that you can have. But for us, obviously, we need to assess, is it fitted out to the right level? Because, we'll often get units that are completely unfurnished. And we'll go in and we'll furnish them. We'll manage that whole process. We'll work with the interior design concepts and share it with the owners so that they're on board and comfortable with what we're proposing. But we know what works from a vacation rentals perspective. So we will choose, the style and all of those things that we know will work from a getting booked perspective. So that's the first step, and making sure that everything is set up in the right way. Of course, then, we don't just rely on the online travel agencies like booking.com, etc. There are other ways of getting guests, other ways of making sure that we keep our bookings.
Before we go down that bit, I want to know the deal. So I come to you, I've got this property, you come and check it out, and you say, this property is worth X per month, per week, per year. What do you say?
I mean, we break it down into a nightly rate.
A nightly rate?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you guarantee the nights?
So we don't guarantee the nights, but what we do is we ensure that we keep that occupancy and that revenue at a level that is acceptable for the owner and for us as a business.
Okay, so let's keep it simple. Let's say, Spencer, it's £100, or let's do dollars, $100 a night. Okay, well, there's 365 nights in the year. Can you guarantee me a minimum number of nights?
We wouldn't guarantee.
No guarantee?
We don't operate on that basis.
You just say, we're going to try and get as many people into your unit as possible. So how can I measure my ROI?
So in very simple terms, it's all about the performance. And for us, we're not making any money unless we're getting bookings. So we don't charge a flat fee, right? So if we were to take the property on, it's not like we're making anything out of it until we start getting bookings in the door.
We're both incentivized in the same
completely incentivized in the same way. And obviously with a percentage management fee that pushes us to achieve that higher level revenue. And we do that carefully because, we want to make sure we get the right guests in. We want to make sure they don't cause any hassle or, damage the property. We protect the asset as well. We take about 50% of our bookings direct, which is really strong performance. In other words, people go on our website or they call us up or they send us a message in order to make a booking, or we've got corporates that we work with who bring us clients on a regular basis. So these are the things that we do to drive that revenue, to drive that occupancy, to make sure that the units are kept busy, to make sure that the properties are occupied. And look, I mean, I think testament to it of 3 people in my own team have bought apartments to give them to us to manage because they see the performance, they see that the numbers work.
So if you make a comparison between this property being rented on a long-term rental contract for let's say 2 or 3 years, let's say, and the alternative is they come to you, hand the keys over to, I hand the keys over to you and say, right, crack on with it, Paul. What's the difference going to be in my ROI? How much more money will I be making, probably, possibly, kind of doing it your way as opposed to a long-time rental?
Yeah, so we would typically aim for between 20 and 30% net improvement in revenue over the long-term rental.
So if the rental was £100 a year, you'd be looking at £125 to £130 a year
net to the owner.
Net.
And so what typically
after your fees.
Yeah, exactly, and after utilities as well. In broad brush strokes, right? If you think about it this way, whatever the unit would generate on an annual lease basis, we will target to double the revenue on that unit on a short-term net basis. And then once you work back from our fee, from the utility costs and everything else that needs to come out, you're getting down to the actual money that's left for the owner. And what we'd always try and do is have at least a 20 to 30% improvement in that net revenue. And we've been very successful at doing that.
Have you ever not done that?
There are units that don't work. And we've learned over the years that, nothing is guaranteed. And as we've said, there are no guarantees in life. And we operate on that basis. We operate on the basis of making informed, educated, experienced assessments of units. And we're very straight, we're very transparent, and we're very clear. If a unit is not going to perform and we think this is a disaster, wrong area, wrong part of town, wrong view, wrong furnishings if it comes already furnished and there's no willingness to invest or improve, all of these different factors come into play. But if they are, factors that are going to negatively impact on the performance of the unit, we'll just say no. We'll just say, look, you're better off to go long-term rather than doing short-term rental. And I think that's important. That honesty is important because, that transparency is important, making sure that we're valued as partners, in the delivery of the service. I think it's very important that we have that approach. One thing I'd say as well in terms of, the selection of the units, we do turn down a lot of the clients that want to get into vacation rentals, but where it works very well. There are a lot of benefits to owners rather than just purely, and money obviously is critical and very important in terms of making higher net revenue, but it's not the only reason that people work with companies like us in vacation rentals. You have a flexibility. There's an inherent flexibility in working with Maison Privee in that you're not tied into a multi-annual contract. At a minimum, in terms of an annual lease, you have to give 12 months notice. That's not the case in vacation rentals. Our typical notice period is 3 months. So the owner has effectively got vacant possession all the time.
And can I also use the property myself?
Yeah,
I want to go
exactly.
A couple of weeks at Christmas and New Year if I wanted to do that.
Preferably not at the nice times of the year when you're making the highest ADRs in revenue. But if you want to, it's your property and we can have that conversation.
Okay,
but
got it.
yeah.
Right, understood. So people out there that have got properties that are nice properties, they're renting them on long-term contracts, they could be potentially getting a higher return by putting them through a system with you. Once they give the keys to you and that you've done a deal with them, do they have any involvement at all?
They don't need to. We of course encourage owners to be as engaged.
They live overseas. Or...
Yeah, and loads of our owners live overseas. We encourage them to be as engaged as they want to be, but they don't need to be. I mean, effectively every month we send them a statement and a bank transfer of the revenue that they've generated that month.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's very clear. And in between times and at all times, they have access to an online portal that shows them whether they've got bookings, how many bookings, how long for, where the guest is from, how much they're paying, all that sort of stuff. All the information is there so they know, what's in my calendar, what's in my pipeline, and whether that's 1 unit or 20 units or 50 units. And what I'd always say is that, there are lots of different types of owners out there. And we've worked with some very large property owners. We've worked with the very biggest developers in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
And, we don't necessarily come and say, look, I want to take your entire building or your entire portfolio. But it's always the consideration of, well, if you diversify your revenue streams, maybe think about how you can, take a part of that portfolio or portion of that portfolio and allocate it to vacation rentals while, you have the rest of it in long-term rentals. It's particularly important, I think, when new units are coming onto the market. I think when you've got a new building, in many cases, maybe you've got a single owner. Yes, you can effectively dump all of the units onto the market at the same time and wait for the market to pick them up. Or you can segment out a portion of those units, put them into a vacation rental pool effectively. And keep your inventory out of the market, okay, because we don't interfere with the long-term rental prices effectively.
Got it. That was a very business-like conversation. We're sitting here talking to a businessman about his business. You've moved from one industry to another over the years. You've got quite an interesting past. Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
I've always struggled a little bit with the term, to be honest. I've always felt, it's a little bit too fancy and a little bit too...
Is it cheesy?
Yeah.
Because I'm uncomfortable with the word.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt that you had to be extraordinary to consider yourself an entrepreneur. I just think I've worked hard and I've done a few different things and I've pushed agendas in my own head that I wanted to try and do. And I think you evolve into maybe what somebody would articulate or describe as an entrepreneur. But and I guess there is an entrepreneurial core, or there's a heart in it that aligns with that definition. And I would say I've always had that. I've always wanted to run my own business. I've always wanted to be in business. And I took a route. In fact, my original thought process about becoming a management consultant, strategy consultant type profile was, it gives you a lot of insight into a lot of different industries and a lot of different businesses. Mm-hmm. And so when I first got into that space, it was like, okay, well, we'll get this chance to look and see what's interesting, what's worth doing, where the money lies, where the profits and losses are to be found. And that was really, I think, an important step in trying to figure out how you do things. Not to say necessarily that you find at the bottom of that hole that you're looking into the absolute answer to everything, but I think that it's important to assess and consider. In terms of Maison Privee, for me, it was an evolving thought process. I mentioned working in various different places. A particular case in point would be working in Newcastle on a very long project for a number of months. Coming out of the Hilton Hotel after just getting sick of being there and moving to Grey Street, which I don't know if you know Newcastle well, but it's the kind of the main shopping street, the equivalent to Grafton Street in Ireland, and living over that fantastically buoyant, energetic place, bringing a very different feel to working, because you're in a very different environment. It was very interesting, and again, these are things that. They're gestation points, I guess. So things that, they start growing. I had...
I want to go through some other areas though, because for me, what's interesting is you're an entrepreneur now, but you were a Mr. Corporate before. And sometimes people struggle moving from the security and almost the order of being in that corporate world, then to going out there and kind of like, here we go. I'm taking, everything by the seat of the pants and doing something completely different, even though, intelligently and strategically, you would have thought all of this stuff through. I'm sure you'd have written business plans and analysed everything that you need to analyse beforehand. But it's still, as a human being, it's still a big step from someone to go from that corporate world. And then your corporate experience isn't, you're working at Tesco's. You've got great experience. A very young chairman of a business in Ireland, and then going on with Etihad as well. So I find that most people that sit in that space find it very difficult to jump across. So that part is interesting to me. What did it feel like when you were going to become an entrepreneur? Were you like, have I got this? Have I got the kind of like the gusto and the grit? Have I got that? Or were you really assured and said, what, this is meant to be? I know this is the right thing.
No, I think there are moments where you feel both those things. I think that, it is a journey. There are, times that things are harder, that maybe, you're moving down an avenue that you kind of think, okay, well, maybe I need to just, switch a little bit the model or move things a little bit. You go through these and you go through these kind of iterations, I think, very, very quickly. And it doesn't necessarily stop. I mean, during COVID, we pivoted to extended stays, and it was awesome for us. I mean, we had a very, very busy period during COVID. We had guys flying in on chartered jets to stay in our villas because they could, and because of the way Dubai managed the situation, it made things possible that otherwise wouldn't have been possible in other countries. So, but you move and you align and you realign and you reevaluate and you look again. But I suppose there's a couple of things. Early days, I mean, growing up as a kid, I was from a business family, so I was always surrounded by that idea. We had a number of different businesses in the family, and the hotel was one of them, and restaurants and stuff. So you have a little bit of that background is ingrained, I think, from an early age, no matter what. And yes, as I moved into from university into the working world, there was a decision point for me at the time about whether I'd do something myself. Then it was there, I knew it was there. It was always there. And I guess the question was, okay, what can you do now to get enough experience to really make it worth your while to then take that risk, or to be able to take that risk. And I think that's the approach I took. So while I was in the corporate world and I had some really interesting roles, it was always in the back of my head that at some point, I want to try and do something myself. And, the timing of things, in terms of the regulations in the Dubai market, etc., for vacation rentals were there. There's a few things, and as I said, I had been thinking about it, and a few things just came together, and that was why I decided then, okay, let's give it a go. And at the start, it was like, I think myself and my wife Sheila, we were there in the first apartment that we had in the business, literally sweeping the floors, making the beds. I mean, we had rented this one apartment as a trial to see if it worked, to go through the exercise of how will the mechanics of this type of business work out in reality. And it was literally down to that. I mean, yes, I'm chairman of this big company, but I'm also organizing literally the furniture on the floor, making sure that everything is being prepared for, the guest that's about to arrive. Yeah. And yeah, it's a bit different for sure when you see yourselves in very different environments. But literally the evening that we had finished that work of getting the apartment ready, getting everything set up, we had our first guest. And I'm still in touch with that guest, by the way. And also that apartment is still in our portfolio. And that was 2017 in March when we set the business up. So, I think that there are things that happen in the course of any business person's life that, inspire you to keep pushing on, and where things are a little bit difficult. Yeah, okay, fine. It's difficult today. And there are many difficult days, let's be honest, in any business person's life. Everything doesn't always go swimmingly. Things can go wrong.
Surely it goes really easy.
You can
just talk to me about that for a minute, because I think that when we think about challenges in business, we try and look for the good things, and I think we kind of internalize the bad things or the difficult moments because they don't bring us much joy. We don't often sit and take the gratitude from those challenges. When you look at your business, talk to me about people and the headaches that people can offer you. I think initially the headache that a guest might be, that doesn't know how to be responsible and, has had a wild party in somebody's house, let's say, and I'm sure you've had that happen a few times. But how many people in your team?
So we've 25 at the moment.
And of the 25 that you have in your team, okay, how interesting or difficult is it to keep them motivated, inspired and excited? What kind of things do you do, and what kind of challenges do you face around manpower?
We've a really good team, and that to me is one of the fundamentals. Finding those people is always the challenge. So finding additional team members, the effort that you go to try and identify, to select and to bring on board new team members is always a challenge. And especially in a market like Dubai, where there's, a million different crazy things going on and lots of people moving and all that kind of stuff. It is hard to find people. But, without the team, I wouldn't be able to run the business. That's the reality. I would not be able to run the business. And having, the opportunity to bring people through that process of growing up within the team, I think is really important to me. One of the fundamentals that I have is that I do not want to micromanage people. I don't want to be the type of boss that is going to sit on top of anybody in the team. I really take a lot of pleasure from seeing team members stand up, from seeing them take responsibility, taking ownership, figuring out a way of doing something better, doing something different, and them being proud of it because, they've proven something to themselves, I think that's really important. And that's, it's probably one of the best parts of running a business.
Talk to me then about culture then. What's the culture like within your business? Because that's everything, isn't it? Sometimes you go into an environment, it can feel uncomfortable, hostile, toxic and all this kind of stuff. But how did you focus on culture and how have you created it? And if I was to walk into your business and meet all in your team, what would be kind of running through their veins about the business?
Yeah, I think we've a very flat organization. I would describe it as. We don't we don't stand on ceremony. If somebody has got a point to make, or they've got something that they think is going to contribute, then they feel very comfortable doing it. I think I've quite a dry sense of humor, and I think everybody kind of gets that. You know, it's that sort of approach. You might get a very smart response from me, but it's not meant in a negative way, if you know what I mean. It's, you know, we're very open. We speak very frankly within the team, and I think, you know, it is really about encouraging people to think on their feet, to roll with the punches. Yeah, look, there's lots of stuff that goes on every day. You know, we're doing 10,000 guests a month coming through Maison Privee. You know, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of activity. That's a pretty big hotel in terms of...
You've got 10,000 guests coming through a month?
Yeah.
25 people to manage?
Yeah, but it's not just 25, I suppose, 25 in-house, it is within the core team, but then we've a lot of outsourced service providers who are also, you know, delivering for us on a daily basis. So, for example, the cleaning and the maintenance and the laundry, this is all outsourced to specific service providers that we work with. But the core team is small. And yes, we manage all of that. And it is busy. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's always things happening when you're dealing with the general public, or you're dealing with individuals en masse. So it's about how do you preempt some of the potential things that might crop up. How do you make sure that you have everything ready in advance? And of course, then you need to have the resolutions to things that do go wrong as well. And hopefully, you know, they're limited. But, you know, most people are very understanding. If you're late to arrive for a check-in, for example, by a few minutes because of traffic, most people are very understanding of that type of thing. And they realize that, you know, your intentions are right, etc. All that type of style is important, I think.
Mm. You're married?
Yes.
Are you married to your wife as much as you're married to your business, or?
Yeah, actually, you know, Sheila's been with me since the start of the business.
She's in the business?
She doesn't work in the business.
Oh, right,
but
okay.
I think when you're married to somebody who owns a business, you effectively are. You know, she has her own career path.
So talk to me about the relationship that you have then, because being a guy that's started a business, anyone that starts a business for the first time goes through all kinds of challenges, and a lot of them are emotional and psychological, questioning yourself, doubting yourself, all this kind of stuff, very, very human and normal things. What value is having a good partner meant to you?
I think it's crucial. You know, you do need support. You need that emotional support. You need the double checking. And I think that in a relationship is really important. You fact check. You know, you get a second opinion. You check the rationale of your thought process. And I think that's something that's hugely valuable. And for me, Sheila's been an amazing support all the way through the process. As I said, there from day one, you know, from the very gestation of the idea going around in my head to, you know, getting that first apartment set up, to having the very first calendar on the wall that was marked in coloured pens, to know what bookings were coming when, you know, to moving into, you know, having the right systems and technology and all that kind of stuff in place. As you go through those various different steps, there are different questions. There are different things that come through your mind, and you need sounding boards. And I think, you know, it's very important to have that. You know, to have that support, to have that thought process, and that longevity in those discussions, I think also.
If she wasn't around, let's say she decided she'd go back to Ireland or wanted to do something else and not stay around, what loss would there be for you emotionally? Where would you struggle, do you think?
But I think this comes to her mind on a very frequent basis. But outside of that,
you need me.
Yeah. No, look, I think, you know, it would be a massive change. You know, you need that. I think you need that support structure. You know, it's very important to address those inner thought processes that are always going around. Your head is always flying. You know, you're running a business. There's 10 million things that are going on that, you know, despite having all the team members that are doing, you're the only person who actually knows all of the things that's going on.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it all stops with you as the owner, as the, you know, the founder of the business, as the guy, you know, who whoever it is, whether it's a property owner as a client, or whether it's a guest, who has a concern, who has an issue, or whether it's a supplier, or whether it's a team member. No matter what the problem is, at the end of the day, it always comes back to you, and that requires resilience. We do ebb and flow, of course, in our positivity on various different things at various different times, and there's always something going on, and sometimes it's easily resolvable, and sometimes it's a bit more complex, and sometimes you haven't quite figured out the way yet. But that's all part of it, and it's you need to find that resilience. You need to build that resilience, and I think navigating your way through that shows strength of character, I suppose, and you need to push the boundaries all the time to be able to manage it, I think.
What do you do when you're not at work and you're not focused on that kind of stuff? I've seen some stuff with you that like to race cars and some bursts of adrenaline down at the Autodrome in Abu Dhabi. Tell me about a guy like you. You're all day, every day, full on. Luckily, you've got the support of a great wife, but you're an entrepreneur. You're an owner operator of a business, and as much as you try and be hands off and don't micromanage, the fact is it's all on you, isn't it? If it goes well, it's actually on you. If it goes badly, then you're carrying it too. So how do you decompress?
Yeah, look, and I think it's important to find a way of managing that stress, because in our business it's 24/7 effectively. It's people are around, people are checking in.
And at the time you want to have a downtime, it's probably your busiest time, isn't it?
There's a lot of that. And the holiday seasons, and this is, talking about Sheila, one of the frustrations can be sometimes, we don't always get to travel at holidays, because we're here, it's peak period, and we're flat out and we're busy and we're trying to do this and we're trying to do that. So these things.
You celebrate birthdays on a Monday night, do you?
Well, it can get a little bit like that. You can sometimes get into those situations where you don't have quite the normality, but that's the way it goes. You have to roll with these things, and you do have to find ways of managing it. And getting away for a few days, just chilling out somewhere, at a weekend, or sometimes during the week if it's a quieter week, or getting home is very important. I think for both myself and Sheila, like getting back to home is really important. Seeing family and making sure you keep the connection and all that kind of thing. Crazy things like, driving cars and, interests in watches and all that kind of stuff keep your brain, I suppose, ticking over in a different way. You're exploring a passion or an interest in something that distracts you away maybe for a few minutes from something that's going on in a normal workday. And I do think that these are important things to do. I mean, I've always been a car enthusiast since I was a kid. I kind of grew up with cars, and I think that stays in your blood a little bit, like the entrepreneurial thing. It's something that you don't ever get over that. It's something that you're either into or you're not, and if you're into it, you are.
So you're, as far as I'm concerned, an entrepreneur that's been on a journey. Are you a billionaire yet? No, you're not. Okay, but your entrepreneurial journey has come off the back of being in the corporate world, which I don't see very often. Many entrepreneurs have become an entrepreneur out of necessity, or were a salesman that was selling something and decided to set a business up. They're often not the people that have gone from that very secure, incredibly good job title in those corporate entities that does that kind of stuff, but you did. So my audience out there would love to learn the steps that you took, as maybe some tips that you could give us so that they don't make the mistakes that other people make. So maybe if we could take 3 tips from you, what would you say to budding, professional, committed entrepreneurs?
I think the first thing is to try and identify what problem you're trying to solve. So, working down through a long list of potential businesses will lead you to understand, okay, well, look, if I work in any of these sectors, what is it that I can do that little bit different? Mm-hmm. What is it that I can bring to the table to make it a better product or a better service or a better proposition? So I think getting that boiled down is the first step. Once you boil it down, assess it, really get into the details, understand, all of the ups and downs as much as possible, understand where the competition lies, understand where, your risk lies, understand where your spend lies in terms of, getting operational with something like with the business in that space that you want to look at. And then I would say that the third part is really to test it. To to get into the nitty-gritty of operating, even in a pilot type of a way. And I think it's very possible to do a lot of these types of things while you're involved in something else. You don't have to, quit your job and go full-time into something, And I think in people's minds, there's a really big opportunity to work out a lot of this kind of stuff before taking the plunge, before taking that really risky step of giving up your career or, moving headlong into something without having fully thought it out and worked it out. Of course, you'd always have things coming your way and all that. That's normal. But you need to work ways around these things. Navigation, as we talked about earlier, is really important for any business person.
So potentially could somebody stay in their corporate environment and start a side hustle, testing what they're doing, maybe trying to find clients or trying to find business opportunities with the product and service that they've created before, as you said, they step away from the security of that corporate environment they've been in for so long?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I would say they should be doing this in their personal time, of course, rather than for the company during the company time. But yes, in essence, effectively, yeah, why not? Start working out these plans in your spare time. Start thinking about, start analysing, start assessing, and do that testing. The market testing is really important no matter what type of business that you get into. You need to know that there's a market there for your product or service. Understanding, what the scale of that market is gives you massive insight. And if you can find a way of just leaning into it a little bit, getting a feel for it, and beginning to see where the cracks are, where the fixes are, that puts you into a very strong position.
Agreed. Okay, well, thank you for that. I just want to go back lastly and just talk about the types of clients that are really important to you. When I think about your clients, you're essentially looking for people that have either got a portfolio of properties that are the right type of properties, or maybe a small portfolio, I don't know, and everything in between, that are looking to get a better return than they would get if they were just renting it out on a long-term rental. But essentially those people would know that contractually things would be a little bit different, but they still wouldn't have the daily hassle of trying to run it themselves. It could, like an Airbnb almost, it can be done and taken off their hands. Have I just described your ideal client?
Yeah, I think, look, that's certainly the core that we would go after. The clients that we can do the best for are those types of clients.
Okay, so for all of my audience that are listening right now, and for those of you guys that are watching this episode, if you own a property portfolio, and I'm not talking about garages and warehouses on an industrial estate, but if you own a property portfolio here in Dubai where you've got high-end apartments, properties that are overlooking the sea maybe in downtown, or villas and houses in luxury areas, like golf courses, I would guess as well with golf courses, maybe Maison Privee is the type of company you should explore what they can do and how they can do it to benefit you at the end of the day. It doesn't matter to me either way, but maybe that can work for you. Paul, thank you very much for coming on the show today and sharing your information and your wisdom. I love the fact that you're just this kind of like calm guy. I've been trying to eke out of you some panicked moments, but you're definitely one of those guys that just keeps his equilibrium above water. And I try, like most ducks, and you're paddling like crazy. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, Spencer. Great to have been here. Appreciate it.